Hi, my name is Michaela Pilkington and I'm an international team rider for NASH. Today we're going to go over how to replace your bladder on your wing. Alright, the very first thing we need to do is go ahead and detach our inflate-deflate valve. We're going to go ahead and open up this Velcro. We want to make sure that our cap is off here. The next thing we want to do is actually open up our zipper. And take off the Velcro and go ahead and open up that zipper. Once our zipper is open, we can reach inside our wing and hold the inside of our inflate-deflate valve while we take it off. You're going to use this tool that came in your repair kit, and we're going to just kind of slot it on here. You're going to want to make sure that we twist counterclockwise in order to remove this. Go ahead and just keep twisting until it comes off, just like that. Go ahead and set that aside. From here, we're going to make sure that we detach the Velcro. You're going to feel there's a Velcro ring that's holding on the inside of that inflate-deflate valve. Once that's detached, we can go ahead and remove our strut valve. To take off our hose here, we're going to remove this black piece first, and then we're going to pull off our hose. Just like that. Once your hose is detached, we can go ahead and push our valve into the interior of our wing. So we're just going to kind of push on it here, get it to come out of its seat. We can just pop it inside just like that. All right, our next step is going to be to open up the end of our wingtips here. You're going to feel for the Velcro. Once you find the Velcro that's just on the inside, you can go ahead and remove that. And then from there, that fabric should just pull right out. Once we've got the fabric out, we can take the Velcro off of the bladder, or that's connecting the bladder to the inside of the wing here. And then we're going to want to go ahead and attach a string so that when we pull it out, we have something to bring it back in with. So the next thing we're going to go ahead and do is attach our string. We've got this hole here that we can use to do that. So I'm going to just push my string through the hole. I'll go ahead and tie that. That way when I pull my bladder out, the string goes with it and I have a way to replace the bladder. We're going to go ahead and repeat this process on the other side of our wing. All right, the next step is going to be to remove your bladder. You can just reach inside this zipper part here. We're going to remove that inflate-deflate valve piece, and then we can just start to pull nice and slow. Once our bladder's out, we can go ahead and detach our strings. And now we're ready to repair or replace our bladder. Once you're ready to reinsert your bladder, we're going to go ahead and make sure that it's oriented correctly. You can see we've got our inflate-deflate valve here, and then we have our strut valve there. We want to make sure that it lines up correctly with our wing. Next thing we're going to do is go ahead and attach our strings onto the correct sides. Just going to come to the end of my wingtip here. I'm going to make sure that I get the string that's leading out the wingtip that direction. I'll go ahead and use that hole to attach my string to. I can guide that side of the wingtip over that direction. Go ahead and find my other wingtip. And I'll get the string that's leading out that side attached to the correct wingtip. Great, the next thing that I need to do is get the bladder ready to be reinserted. I'm going to go ahead and fold or flatten the edge of my wingtip here. Jeez. I'm going to just start that over. Okay. All right, the next thing we need to do is get the bladder ready to be reinserted. I'm going to go ahead and flatten my leading edge here to make a nice space to work with. I want to make sure that my valve is on the upper side of the bladder here. That way it's oriented correctly. I'm going to start in the center and just work with the right side of my wing right now. From here, I'm going to go ahead and accordion my bladder, making sure that everything stays nice and flat, and that I'm lining up my seams. Once I've got this folded, I can go ahead and get the bladder started by just inserting the wingtip into my zipper. Again, making sure that everything's laying nice and flat, I can go ahead and start pulling my wingtip through using the string on the end. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and just start pulling my bladder through, just kind of keeping an eye on it, making sure everything's sliding through nice and even and flat. There we go. All right, we're gonna go ahead and repeat this process for the other side. Again, I'm gonna make sure that I create a nice flat working space. From here, I'm gonna make sure that where my bladder comes out is not twisted. I wanna make sure we're not flipping this over or creating any sort of a twist in this bladder. With that coming out nice and flat, I'm gonna go ahead and again make sure that my inflate-deflate valve is facing up, and I'm gonna just start to accordion this side over here. All right, once I have that bladder folded nice and neat, again, making sure that there's no twists, I can go ahead and get this side of my wing started as well. There's some Velcro on the inside where our inflate-deflate valve attaches, so we want to make sure that we get the wingtip in just far enough so that it gets past that Velcro and doesn't get stuck. Just going to do one last check and make sure everything's nice and flat. And then we're ready to pull it through. All right, I can go ahead and just start pulling my wingtip through here. Just keeping an eye on the bladder, making sure that it doesn't get twisted as it pulls through. I'm also gonna watch as that valve for the strut gets pulled through, just to make sure it doesn't get caught on the zipper. One other thing you'll notice is that I made sure my leading edge was nice and flat before I started pulling this bladder through. All right, there we go. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is go ahead and get our strut valve seated. You can see it sitting right by the zipper here. I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of push it inside the kite, along with the rest of the bladder. I'm gonna go ahead and find that valve on the inside here and bring it over to where it needs to get seated. We wanna make sure that when we're seating our valve, we're really checking to make sure that we don't accidentally pull through any excess bladder. If we get any bladder here, that could lead to a potential situation where it might pop. So I'm just gonna double check I don't have any bladder I'm pulling through, and then I can go ahead and get that seated. All right, once you have that seated, you're gonna see that the valve is equally touching the Dacron all around, and that we don't have any bladder sticking out of this valve hole here. Next thing we're gonna do is go ahead and attach our hose. It's gonna be easiest if you give this a nice lick. Once you've licked that, you can go ahead and stick your hose on, and then we can get that black clamp on. If you're having a hard time pushing it down, you can go ahead and actually hold the hose here and kind of pull in opposite directions. That's gonna help get that clip down. There you go. The next thing we're gonna do is go ahead and seat our inflate-deflate valve. So I can open up this Velcro so I can kind of see through here and work inside of my zipper pocket. I'm gonna just grab my inflate-deflate valve on the inside. I'm gonna line it up. Make sure there's no bladder that's gonna get accidentally Velcroed there. And then we're just gonna place that inflate-deflate valve, give it a nice push. And then one last time, just double check that there's no bladder stuck in there. Great, the next thing we're gonna do is put back on our inflate-deflate valve. We're gonna make sure that our cap is oriented correctly and that we kind of seat it into the little grooves there. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and reach inside here and just make sure I hold the inside of my inflate-deflate valve. And I'm just gonna get it started. And then once it's started, I can go ahead and use my tool to tighten it the rest of the way. We wanna make sure that when we're tightening these, they're hand tight, definitely not cranked on. You don't wanna tighten them too much. Just nice and snug, and then we're good to go. All right, the last thing we need to do here is just make sure that we close our zipper. You want to make sure that you don't accidentally zip your bladder in there either. Close our Velcro. We're good to go. Awesome, the next thing we need to do is close our wingtips here. If you forgot to take your string off earlier, you can go ahead and do that now. We're gonna go ahead and kind of shove a little bit of the excess bladder inside of our wing. Just kind of give it a good shake. Next thing we're gonna do is go ahead and fold our Velcro over. We wanna make sure that when we're folding our Velcro over, that it's a nice straight fold. You shouldn't have to be twisting this piece here. If you are having to twist it, that means that you've likely seated your bladder incorrectly and you should start over. So I'm gonna go ahead and fold this on here. And then from here, what I can do is fold my material over. And I'm gonna go ahead and fold it kind of side to side as well. It's gonna help me actually get it inside of my wingtip here. Once it goes in, we're gonna make sure we get it seated on the Velcro correctly. And then just kind of make sure the end looks good. Shouldn't have any like twists or anything in the end. Awesome. We'll go ahead and do the other side. All right, once we've got our wingtips closed, we're ready to inflate the wing. We just want to make sure we give it a quick shake to kind of let that bladder settle out. So we'll go ahead and start in the middle here. Just kind of work our way down each side. Just gives that bladder a chance to get seated. Next, we can go ahead and grab our pump. Make sure we get our pump leash attached. We're going to check to make sure that our valve is in the closed position. If it's not, you can go ahead and just give it a click. You want to check to make sure you've got your right attachment. Go ahead and get that on. And then from here, we can go ahead and start inflating. We want to make sure that we go nice and slow. Just in case there's anything going on, we can catch it before we've inflated it too much. Once we start getting our wing a little bit inflated here, we want to make sure that we're looking at that leading edge that we've just replaced. For any dimples or creases that look off, that's going to indicate a potential twist in our leading edge. Once we get it inflated roughly this much, we're going to go ahead and just take a look. One of the things we're looking for is dimples, kind of like we've got over here. So we're just going to come over here and check that out. We can give it a nice squeeze and make sure that it's not a twist that's in the bladder. If we do find that we have any twists, you're going to go ahead and remove that bladder and start over. Something that we're looking for here as we inflate our wing is anything that looks like this. This is going to indicate that we have some sort of a twist in our bladder. Before we actually take it out and remove it, we can go ahead and deflate the wing and give it a good shake and see if that fixes what we've got going on here. Great, so that area that looked a little bit off, I don't think that it's a true twist. I think it's just not seated correctly. So one of the things that we can do to fix that is once we've deflated our wing, we can kind of shake this leading edge side to side. That's just going to help reseat that bladder. Once we've given it a good shake, we can go ahead and try to reinflate it again. If for some reason it is a full twist, we are going to have to remove that bladder and reseat the entire thing. All right, so we're going to go ahead and inflate our bladder again. Going nice and slow. We don't want to inflate it anywhere close to full pressure. Because again, we want to make sure that we don't have any twists or anything looking like it's not seated correctly. As I inflate this wing, you can see that shaking that leading edge helped fix that problem area. It's nice and seated now. We can go ahead and just keep inflating the pressure. Great. You've now replaced your leading edge on your wing. All right, now we're going to go ahead and show you how to replace the strut on your wing. There's a couple of options when removing the strut from your wing. We have a string option, and then we also have the ability to attach our string to the actual valve of the strut on the wing. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right, step one on your strut replacement is going to be to remove our hose from our valve here. And so we're gonna go ahead and start by removing that black piece, and then we can remove our hose from our valve just by pulling there. The next thing we need to do is push our valve into the interior of the strut on our wing. So we're gonna do that just by using our thumb here, kind of getting it off its seated position. And then we can see that it'll just push right inside there. Once you have your valve pushed into your wing, we have two options depending on the style of wing that you have. You can either go ahead and attach the string that you're going to use to pull your replacement bladder back through to your valve here, or if your model has a string underneath, we can use that as well. You can go ahead and look for that by kind of looking underneath your strut here, and you're gonna see a little string sticking out. That's gonna be a place that we can attach our string to as well in order to pull through our bladder. Awesome, if you are gonna choose to use the option of the string, you wanna make sure that when you attach your line to it, that you're actually pushing the string and the line through the hole before you pull your bladder out. If you don't do that, there's the potential that this string can rip off the little holder on the bladder. So if you want to keep that intact, again, just making sure that you're pushing through your string and kind of your leader line before you pull the bladder out. All right, another option you may have on your wing is a dump valve. If you do find that you have a dump valve on your wing strut, you're going to want to make sure that you push this through to the inside of the wing before pulling your strut bladder out. The method that's going to be most universal for wings is going to be to attach the string to the valve. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to just put our string all the way down, make sure it's nice and tight. That way when we pull our strut bladder out, the string goes with it, so we can replace the bladder after the fact. All right, once you've got your string attached, we can go ahead and push our valve all the way in, so that way it doesn't get caught when we go to pull our bladder out. All right, the next thing that we're gonna do is take out the bladder from the end here. You're gonna wanna reach inside the end of your strut and find the Velcro that's on the inside. You're gonna remove that Velcro and pull out the material that's in there. Once you've got that material out, you're gonna find that your strut bladder is attached with Velcro to that material. You're gonna go ahead and take that off. You're gonna make sure that everything looks good and that you've got all your struts pushed into the inside of your bladder. Thanks. Once you've done that, you're gonna go ahead and just double check that your valves are pushed onto the inside of your strut here, and then we can go ahead and start slowly pulling the bladder out. There we go, we've removed our bladder. All right, if you're using the string method to pull your bladder back into the inside of the wing, then you don't need to do this step. But if you are using your valve to pull your bladder back in, you're gonna wanna go ahead and invert the top of your bladder just a little bit. It's just gonna help that bladder seat itself when we go to inflate it. So you can see I've just given it a little bit of a tuck here. The next thing I'm gonna do is get my bladder into the inside of my wing. The first thing I wanna do when I go to do this is make sure that my valve is lined up with the correct side. So I can see I have a valve on one side and my dump valve on the other side. I'm gonna line those up corresponding to which side they go to on my wing here. Once I've got this oriented correctly, I'm gonna make sure that I lay out my strut bladder so that there's no twists in it when I go to push it through. From here, what I'm gonna do is get my bladder started. This might involve a little bit of shoving the bladder into the end of your wing, of your strut tip here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start feeding that bladder in, making sure to not twist it. And I wanna make sure that I get it in until those valves are all the way through this small entrance to the strut. Once I've got it started there, I'm gonna just double check that everything is in line, and we can go ahead and pull our bladder through using our string. As I pull this bladder through, I want to make sure that I go nice and slow, and that I just watch the end of the bladder and make sure it doesn't get twisted while I'm pulling this through. Or inflate. Now what? What?
Push the air through.
Okay. Should I talk about that?
Sure.
Okay. If you find that there's some air that's preventing the bladder from sliding into the strut of your wing, you're going to go ahead and just kind of push the air through. It's going to allow you to pull through the rest of that bladder. All right. Here I've got my valve. I'm just going to bring it through its hole. And now I can remove my string. Great, so I'm going to get this valve seated on here. We want to make sure that we're not pulling through any bladder when we do that. You're going to know that you have it correctly when you can see that the entirety of this plastic ring is seated right up against the dacron here. One last thing we want to make sure about this valve is that it's oriented toward our leading edge where our hose needs to get attached. We don't want it facing toward the trailing edge or the side. It should be facing straight up just like that. Before we attach our hose, we're going to go ahead and get our dump valve seated as well. All right, in order to get our dump valve seated, I'm going to kind of feel around and see if I can feel where it's at. Mine is located just right next to my dump valve here. Just going to kind of reach in here, see if I can pull it through. If you're having a hard time pulling it through, you can even kind of use the backside and kind of push it through like that. You're going to go ahead and give it a good shake to make sure that you don't bring through any bladder with that dump valve. This one doesn't have a ring so much that will seat super flush on top. It's a little bit loose, so that's all you need to do is just pull it through. The next thing we're going to do is reattach our hose to our valve and our strut of our wing. The easiest way to do this is going to be to lick it, and then go ahead and stick that hose on. Once that hose is on, we can go ahead and replace that black piece. If you're having a hard time just shoving it on, you can go ahead and hold the hose and kind of pull in opposite directions. That's going to help slide that piece onto our valve. All right, the next thing that we need to do is go ahead and close the tip of our strut. We can start by just kind of pushing the excess bladder into our strut here and give it a good shake. We want to make sure that when we close this Velcro, it's just folding over nice and neat. We want to make sure we're not having to twist the bladder at all. If that's the case, there's a chance you probably have a twist in the bladder up higher. So here I'm just going to fold it over. I'm going to fold this piece over as well. Then I'm going to kind of fold it into more of like a C shape so that I can fit it into the end of my strut. From here, I'm just going to put it in. You can kind of see where that Velcro's at. That's what I'm aiming for. I'm going to line up that Velcro, squish it so it's nice and secure. From here, I'm just going to make sure that the fabric is nice and neat in the end of my strut. Now we're ready to inflate it and test it out. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and give my strut a really good shake. That's going to help ensure that that bladder is seated in there correctly. So I'm going to reach close to where my valve is and close to where the tip of my strut is. I'm going to go ahead and just shake it kind of side to side here. And that's just going to help get that bladder seated. Right. The next thing we're going to do is make sure that our dump valve is closed if you have one of those. We can go ahead and use our Velcro here to make sure it's nice and secure. We always want to make sure we attach our pump leash. Go ahead to our inflate-deflate valve, remove the cap. Make sure that our inflate-deflate valve is in the correct position. We can just give it a click if it's not. Go ahead and get our hose attached. Now we can start pumping. We want to make sure that when we pump, we're going nice and slow. I want to be sure to catch anything that might be wrong before we have too much air pressure in our wing. Things I'm looking for here as it starts to fill up with air is any sort of like dimples, anything that might indicate a twist in that bladder. So I can see that bladder starting to fill up. I'm going to give it just a minute. And I'm going to go ahead and just give it a little shake. Everything's looking pretty good. One thing I want to do too is make sure that my bladder is full all the way to the leading edge here. If I feel like I have any space, something that I can do is go ahead and just squeeze my strut to try to get that bladder to open up to the leading edge. All right, just kind of looking this over. Everything looks clean and good. It's ready to go and hit the water with you.